My daughter uninvited me from her wedding, so her fiance's rich dad could walk her down the aisle instead. When she called me asking about the catering, I replied, "Didn't I mention I canceled everything?" Hey Reddit, 34 grand into funding my daughter's wedding, and she calls to tell me I'm not invited anymore because her new rich in-laws think I don't fit their aesthetic. Name's Wade, 55 male. I was 17 when my old man walked out. Left me, my mom, and my younger brother, with 2 months of unpaid rent and a fridge that was basically empty. No note, no goodbye, just gone. I remember sitting in our kitchen that night with a calculator, trying to figure out if I could drop out of high school and work full-time at the auto shop to keep the lights on. My mom talked me out of it, said education mattered. So I did both. Graduated while working 40 hours a week, changing oil and rotating tires. I promised myself that night that if I ever had kids, they'd never wonder if their dad was coming back. They'd never have to pick between staying in school and keeping the heat on. They'd get every shot I didn't. 38 years later, I'd kept that promise. Built up a career as a diesel mechanic. Married Joan when I was 23. Had Holly 7 years later. Worked my way up to shop supervisor. Put away money. Made sure my kid never went without anything important. College paid for. Car paid for. Every opportunity to make something of herself that I'd earned by fixing rigs at 5 in the morning in January. The call came in on a Tuesday night while I was grilling burgers in the backyard. 34 grand deep into funding my daughter Holly's wedding at that point. Not that anyone was counting. Holly's name popped up and I figured she wanted to confirm something about the venue or the catering. 8 months of wedding planning had been 8 months of me working overtime and writing checks while she told me how Dylan Hastings and his investment banker family were helping so much with the vision. Last month, she'd asked me not to mention what I did for work at the rehearsal dinner. Said Dylan's colleagues wouldn't get blue-collar jobs. Asked if I could maybe just say I worked in transportation logistics. I'd laughed it off at the time. Figured it was wedding nerves. Normal bride stress. She started with small talk before dropping the bomb. Dylan's dad, Philip, wanted to walk her down the aisle, with Dylan's mom on the other side. More elegant that way. More sophisticated. More appropriate for the kind of event they were hosting. Dylan's family was used to a certain level of class at these things, and I didn't exactly fit the aesthetic they were going for. I put the call on speaker so Joan could hear. My wife came outside, took one look at my face, and I watched her go from confused to furious in about 3 seconds. She'd been at every venue tour, every cake tasting, every meeting with every vendor. She'd been planning this wedding alongside Holly for 8 months. It got worse. I could still attend as a guest, but I'd need to sit with Aunt Carol in the middle somewhere. The front rows were for Dylan's business partners from New York. Then came the real kicker. Actually, they'd had to make tough choices about the guest list. Space was tight. Would Joan and I mind watching the live stream from home? Joan's face went red. Let me get this straight, Holly. I'm paying 34 grand for a wedding I'm not invited to, and you want me to watch it on my laptop? Dad, don't be dramatic. It's not like that. Then what is it like? Because from where I'm standing, you just uninvited your parents because we're not rich enough to impress Dylan's daddy. That's not fair. Dylan's family has standards, and this is important for his career. We're done here. You want Philip Hastings to walk you down the aisle? Great. He can pay for it too. I hung up before she could respond. Joan was shaking beside me, and I knew we'd just crossed a line we couldn't uncross. I called my buddy Ray the next morning. We met at the diner downtown. Ray listened to the whole thing without interrupting. When I finished, he just shook his head and dumped more sugar in his coffee. Told me I knew what I had to do. That there was only one way to handle what Holly had done, and I already knew what it was. Turns out my timing was perfect. I'd been tracking expenses in my phone's notes app, just a simple running list. Venue deposit, $8,500. Catering, 12 grand. Photographer, 3,200. Flowers, 1,800. The dress alone was 4,100, with another 600 for alterations that Holly said were absolutely necessary. Then there was the DJ, the cake, the invitations, the programs, the favors, the rehearsal dinner venue. Every week for 8 months, another expense. Another wire transfer, another chunk of my paycheck disappearing into Holly's perfect vision. The photographer's contract said full refund if canceled more than 60 days out. We were 68 days from the wedding. 8 days from the caterer had a 50% refund policy up to 45 days. The florist was 75%. The cake lady hadn't started anything yet, so that was full refund territory. Small miracles. Ray did the math faster than I could. 16, maybe 17 grand back if I moved fast and hit every vendor before their deadlines. Enough for that vacation Joan had been wanting for years. The one we'd always put off because we were saving for Holly's future. Ray laughed so hard at that idea he nearly choked on his coffee. Said he wanted a postcard from me living my best life, while Dylan explained to his senator buddies why the wedding reception had no food, no flowers, and no cake. I spent the rest of that day on the phone. Joan sat next to me at the kitchen table with her own list, tag-teaming vendors. She handled the cake, flowers, rental company. I tackled the big ones. We worked like a team, the way we'd done everything for 32 years. Passing each other notes about refund amounts, it felt good. The photographer actually apologized. Said he'd been getting weird vibes from Holly anyway, especially after she'd called asking if he could Photoshop me out of any photos I accidentally showed up in. He processed the refund right there. Told me he got it. The DJ was easy. Professional. 80% back, no questions asked. The honeymoon resort was even easier. They dealt with cancellations all the time. The caterer was trickier. Woman named Lydia, who'd spent months planning Holly's menu. She'd been genuinely excited about this wedding, had created custom dishes. I felt genuinely bad pulling the plug on someone who'd put real work into the project. But when I explained the situation, Lydia went quiet for a solid 10 seconds. Then she said something I'll never forget. 20 years in the business, and she'd never heard of anything that tacky. She'd handle the cancellation personally and refund every cent. By 5 o'clock, we'd canceled or started cancellations for everything except the venue. That was a loss. Already paid in full with no refund clause. $8,500 gone. But everything else was in motion. Rough estimate put us at $15,000 back. Joan started looking at vacation options. Something for just the two of us. My phone started ringing around 6. Holly. I declined it. It rang again. Declined. Text messages flooded in. Lydia had apparently called her to confirm the cancellation. Holly was having a complete meltdown via text. Dad, what are you doing? Lydia said you canceled. This isn't funny. Call me right now. More texts. Accusations. Threats. Promises that she'd never forgive this manipulation. That I was ruining her life over hurt feelings. That Dylan's family was horrified. That I was proving exactly why they didn't want me at the wedding. I turned my phone off completely. Joan asked what I wanted for dinner. I told her those burgers from last night. We heated them up and sat in the backyard while the sun went down. And for the first time in 8 months, I wasn't worried about the next wedding expense, or calculating overtime hours, or wondering how to make ends meet. The wedding was her problem now. The peace lasted 3 days. Then my credit card got declined at the grocery store. I was buying motor oil and beef jerky when the cashier told me it wasn't going through. I tried my debit card. Same thing. My stomach dropped. I walked outside to call my bank, already running through possibilities in my head. Fraud, identity theft, account error, none of them good. Got a guy named Kevin in the fraud department who told me they'd frozen my accounts due to suspicious activity. According to their records, I'd applied for a personal loan of $50,000 yesterday. The application was flagged because it requested immediate payment to an account that wasn't linked to my profile. I told Kevin I hadn't applied for any loan. He said I'd need to file a fraud report and hung up. I called Joan right away, asked her to check our bank account. I heard her moving, her laptop opening. Then silence that went on too long. Then she gasped. $7,500 had been transferred out of our checking that morning. Memo said wedding expenses. Username was HDonovan2024. Holly. I sat down on a parking lot curb, feeling like I'd been hit by one of the rigs I normally fix. We'd set up that account access when Holly moved out for college, for emergencies. One of those parent safety net things that seemed smart at the time. A way to help if she needed it. Joan had completely forgotten about it. So had I. Apparently Holly hadn't. I told Joan to call the bank and report it as unauthorized. Left my motor oil and beef jerky at customer service and drove home probably faster than I should have. When I got there, Joan was on the phone with the bank's fraud department. Her voice that special kind of calm that meant she was about to lose it. I opened my laptop and logged into my credit report for the first time in my life. Nearly threw up. One new credit inquiry from yesterday. Personal loan application for $50,000. None of which I'd authorized. All using my social security number and work information that only family would know. My phone rang. Fraud investigator from the bank. She got right to it. Asked if I'd found unauthorized activity. I told her what happened. The investigator didn't sugarcoat it. This was identity theft. Even though it was my daughter. Even though she'd had previous access for legit reasons. Using that access to start unauthorized transactions was a crime. Was I ready to file a police report? I looked at Joan. She'd finished her call and was standing in the kitchen doorway, arms crossed, face set. She nodded once. Yes, I was filing a police report against my daughter. The next 3 hours were a blur of phone calls and forms. The investigator walked me through filing the police report online. Felt surreal typing my daughter's name into a police report as the suspect. Making it official. The bank issued temporary fraud alerts on all my accounts. New account numbers. New cards. New passwords. I had to call all 3 credit bureaus and put fraud freezes on my credit. Each call took 20 minutes. Each one made me explain what happened. Joan was doing the same thing, freezing her credit, changing passwords, going through every account we had. Multiple banks, credit cards, investment accounts, retirement accounts, insurance. Around 7 that night, I was still going through accounts when Joan came over with printouts from our bank. She'd gone deeper into the statements. Found something that made everything worse. She'd gone through our bank statements for the past year. Every transfer to Holly's account. Every check we'd written for her. Every Venmo payment. Rent help when Dylan lost his job. 3 months of payments. $1,500 a month. The down payment on her car. $6,500. Credit card bailouts. 4 times in the past year. Total of $8 grand. Graduate school application fees, $2,000. Furniture for her apartment, $3,000. Medical bills, $1,200. Car insurance, $1,800. Security deposit on a new apartment, $3 grand. Emergency vet bill for a dog they'd gotten then rehomed, $900. The list kept going. The total was $62,000. Not counting the wedding. Not counting cash when she visited. Not counting groceries or meals or gas we'd covered. I sat down hard. 62 grand in a year, plus the 34 for the wedding. We were 96,000 deep into this kid. Almost 100 grand. And she'd tried to steal more. Ray called around 8 that night. I told him what happened. The fraud, the loan application, the $7,500 transfer. He went quiet for a long time. Asked if I was really filing charges. I told him I already had. That the police report was filed. That the bank was building a case. That I was done. Ray told me something I needed to hear. He'd been in my shoes 3 years ago with his son. Different circumstances, but same betrayal. Same choice. He'd let it slide, given his son another chance. Been the forgiving father. And 6 months later, his son did it again. Cleaned out Ray's savings. Forged checks. Took out a car loan in Ray's name and defaulted, wrecking Ray's credit for years. Ray was still dealing with the mess. Ray said his only regret was not pressing charges the first time. That maybe if he had, his son would have learned something. Would have faced real consequences instead of just another lecture. That enabling someone isn't the same as loving them. I thanked him and hung up. Joan was on the couch going through our credit card statements line by line, highlighter in hand, marking every transaction we needed to check. She'd been my partner for 32 years. Supported me through every hard decision. Never once made me feel bad about being a mechanic instead of some corporate suit. Her phone rang. She looked at the screen, sighed, and answered on speaker without saying hello. Holly launched right into accusations without checking who picked up. Why had we canceled everything? Did we have any idea what we'd done? This was her wedding, her special day, and we were sabotaging it because our feelings got hurt. Joan let her finish, then asked a simple question in a voice I'd never heard before. Did you steal $7,500 from us, Holly? Silence. Long, heavy silence. Mom, I can explain. Did you apply for a $50,000 loan using your father's social security number without his permission? More silence. Then Holly tried to justify it. The money was going to be hers anyway. We'd always said we'd help. When I'd gone crazy and canceled everything, she'd had no choice. Dylan's parents would have been embarrassed. Your father filed a police report this afternoon. The bank is investigating. You committed identity theft. There will be consequences. Holly switched tactics. Started crying. Said the wedding was ruined. That Dylan's parents were furious. That Dylan was barely speaking to her. She needed us. Needed her parents. You're not getting another cent from us. If you don't return that $7,500 by Monday, we're pressing criminal charges. We're done, Holly. Holly's tears stopped on a dime. Her voice went from sobbing to cold in an instant. Fine. Dylan's parents will cover everything. They said you two were holding me back anyway. I don't need you. Joan hung up without responding. We sat there surrounded by bank statements and credit reports and proof of our daughter's theft. I realized something sitting there. We'd already made our decision. There was no going back. No reconciliation that would make this okay. We'd lost our daughter. Or maybe she'd lost us. The next morning, I called the investigator and told her to go ahead with the investigation. My buddy Pete from the shop turned out to be more useful than I expected. Pete's son-in-law was a paralegal who dealt with fraud cases. When I mentioned my situation during Thursday morning break, he made a call right there. Guy named Mike got on the phone and asked 3 rapid-fire questions. When I answered, he told me not to tell her anything. Let the investigation play out. He'd email me a document checklist within the hour. Mike's list came through before lunch. 23 items, copies of the police report, bank statements showing the unauthorized transfers, screenshots of the loan application, emails, text messages, contracts with wedding vendors. If this went criminal, I needed solid documentation. I spent my lunch break working through the list one by one. Joan was doing the same thing at home. She'd called in sick to the library, which she never did, and was building her own paper trail. Every email Holly had sent about wedding expenses. Every text where she'd asked for money. Every invoice and contract. The woman was thorough when she wanted to be. When I got home that evening, Joan had papers spread across the entire dining room table. She'd created a timeline of everything. Every request for money. Every excuse. Every promise to pay us back that never happened. The timeline went back 3 years. 3 years of us saying yes when we should have been asking questions. Looking at it all laid out like that, I realized something. This had been building for years. The wedding was just where it all came to a head. Holly had been treating us like ATMs for a long time, and we'd let her because we loved her, because we wanted her to have opportunities. Turns out we'd been letting her become exactly what she was now. Someone who saw her family as resources to take from instead of people to love. Pete called that evening with more news. The loan Holly had taken out in my name? Bank had traced it. The money went to a wedding planner account. She'd been trying to hire someone to fix everything last minute. The bank had frozen the account when they realized it was fraud. The wedding planner was cooperating, returning it all. But the detective wanted to talk to me Monday. They were building a case for identity theft, fraud, unauthorized access. Joan asked me what I wanted to do. Holly could face criminal charges if I decided to prosecute. Probably not jail for a first offense, but there'd be a record. Probation, community service, fines. I told her I didn't know. Holly was still our daughter, but what she'd done was criminal. We sat there in silence for a while. Then Joan said something that surprised me. Said that maybe this was exactly what Holly needed. That we'd been protecting her from consequences her whole life. That maybe facing real consequences was the only way she'd learn. I looked at my wife. She'd never been the harsh one. Never been the one to suggest tough love. That was usually my area. But she was right. Maybe it was time to let her face the consequences of her own choices. 2 months later, it was Saturday morning, the day before what would have been the wedding. My phone rang at 7 a.m. unknown number. The voice on the other end was smooth, educated, practiced. Philip Hastings, Dylan's father. Said we needed to have a conversation. I told him we had nothing to talk about. He disagreed. Said there'd been a misunderstanding about the wedding arrangements. That things had gotten out of hand. I laughed. Told him there was no misunderstanding. His son and my daughter had uninvited us from a wedding I was paying for. Because we weren't rich enough. Because we embarrassed them. Then my daughter committed fraud trying to steal more money from us. Pretty straightforward. Philip said what Holly did was wrong. But young people make mistakes when they're under stress. The wedding was tomorrow. Holly was upset. His family had spent $12,000 on a new venue. He was willing to cover remaining costs. Surely we could all be adults about this. I told him that was his problem, not mine. Philip tried a different approach. Said he understood my pride was hurt. That as a father himself, he could appreciate how difficult this must be. But I needed to think about what I was doing to my daughter. Did I really want her to remember that her own father had sabotaged her wedding? I told him her father didn't sabotage anything. Her father just stopped being an ATM machine. That's when Philip dropped the act. Mr. Donovan, I'm going to be honest with you. Holly is going to be part of my family soon. My family has certain standards. Dylan is being groomed for partnership. His wife needs to come from a background that looks good for that trajectory. A diesel mechanic father who makes public scenes about money isn't helpful to that image. So you told Holly to uninvite us. This was your idea. I suggested that the wedding party reflect the kind of people Dylan works with professionally. Holly agreed that her humble origins didn't need to be front and center at an event where half the guests manage millions in assets. Tell me something, Philip. When Dylan lost his job last year and couldn't make rent for 3 months, who covered Holly's bills? Was it you, or was it the humble diesel mechanic? Silence on Philip's end. I could practically hear him trying to come up with something that didn't make him look like a hypocrite. He couldn't. The wedding you're paying for? Hope you got good vendors because all mine are canceled. The fraud investigation? That's moving forward. And the $7,500 Holly stole? If it's not back by Monday, I'm pressing criminal charges. You want to marry your son off to a woman with a criminal record? That's your business. Philip's voice went cold, asked if I was really that vindictive. She picked your money and status over her family. Those were her choices, not mine. Philip tried to threaten me then, said I didn't understand who I was dealing with, that he had resources, connections. I told him to watch me, then hung up. Joan was awake now, sitting up in bed, asked me if Philip Hastings had really just tried to threaten me, if he'd really admitted to setting up the whole thing. I told her he had, that he'd basically said we were liabilities, embarrassments, that we needed to be hidden away so we wouldn't hurt Dylan's precious career. Joan said she wanted to punch him in the face. I told her to get in line. We got up and made coffee. The house was quiet, peaceful. For the first time in months, we weren't waiting for the next crisis or the next demand for money. My phone kept ringing throughout the day. Holly's number, Dylan's, unknown numbers. I'd blocked them all. Let every call go to voicemail. Whatever was happening with that wedding, we didn't need to know about it. Sunday afternoon, the day that would have been Holly's wedding day, Joan and I were in our backyard doing absolutely nothing wedding related. The weather was perfect. I couldn't remember the last time I'd felt this relaxed on a weekend. No checking my phone every 5 minutes. Just sitting in my backyard with my wife, drinking sweet tea, watching birds fight over the feeder. Ray showed up around 2 with a 6-pack of sweet tea and a grin that told me he had news. He settled into one of our patio chairs, opened a tea, and shook his head like he couldn't believe what he was about to tell me. He'd run into Lydia, the caterer I'd canceled. They'd crossed paths at the farmer's market that morning. Lydia had recognized Ray from when he'd stopped by the shop a few weeks back, and when she saw him, she'd had to tell someone about what happened. She'd gotten a call from Holly Friday night around 11 p.m., desperate, practically losing it, begging her to cater the wedding today. Offered Lydia 10 grand for a same-day job, $10,000 to put together food for 200 people with less than 36 hours notice. Lydia had actually laughed, thinking it was some kind of joke, but Holly wasn't joking. She'd gotten angry when Lydia laughed, started demanding. Then when Lydia explained it was literally impossible to get ingredients and prep food for 200 people in a day and a half, Holly had completely lost it. Started screaming about how she'd make sure Lydia never worked in this city again, how her future father-in-law was one of the most powerful men in the state and he'd destroy her business. On and on for 3 solid minutes. Lydia had recorded the whole thing, saved the voicemail, said she was keeping it in case Holly actually tried to follow through on her threats. 3 minutes of our daughter having a complete meltdown, threatening a small business owner who'd done absolutely nothing wrong. I sat back in my chair listening to all this. Part of me felt bad. Joan didn't look happy about any of it either. She was sitting with her arms crossed, jaw tight, that look she gets when she's trying really hard not to feel sympathy for someone who doesn't deserve it. But it was hard to feel too bad for someone who'd brought it all on herself, who'd stolen from us, lied to us, treated us like we were embarrassing obstacles to get past. Ray finished his tea and made his excuses, told me to call if I needed anything. The sun was setting, turning the sky pink and orange and purple. Joan spoke up first. She asked me if I thought we'd failed as parents, if we'd done something wrong somewhere along the line that turned Holly into someone who could do this to us. I thought about that. Told her I thought we'd given Holly every opportunity to be a good person. We'd shown her what hard work looked like through example. We'd explained what family was supposed to be. If she'd picked to ignore all that for a guy with money and a fancy job title and parents with country club memberships, that was on her, not us. Joan asked what I was going to tell the investigator Monday. She'd called Friday saying they had enough evidence to go forward with charges if I wanted to. I told her I still didn't know, but I was leaning toward letting them proceed. My phone buzzed then. Text from an unknown number. I opened it anyway. Dad, it's me. Please don't block this number. I need to talk to you. The wedding was a disaster. Everything fell apart. Dylan's not talking to me. His firm called him in. I made a mistake. Please, I need you. I showed Joan. She read it, her expression not changing at all, and handed the phone back without a word. I asked her what she wanted to do. Joan's answer was clear and firm. She wanted to finish repotting her tomatoes. She wanted to plan a real vacation for us, look at hotels and restaurants and beaches. And tomorrow, she wanted me to tell that detective to do his job. I asked if she was sure, because once we did this, there was no going back. She was sure. I didn't respond to the text, turned off my phone completely. Joan moved her chair closer to mine, and we sat there watching the sky. She mentioned that vacation again. Something just for us. Something we'd earned. We had a plan. Monday morning, I called the investigator and told her to go ahead. She said they had enough evidence to move forward with charges. The district attorney would be in touch. Joan had gone back to work, needing the normalcy. I was at the shop doing an oil change when Pete came to get me. Told me there was someone in the front office who needed to see me. Holly was standing there looking like she'd aged 5 years in a week. Makeup running, hair unwashed, wearing sweatpants and an old college hoodie. Eyes puffy and red. She'd been crying recently and was gearing up to cry again. I didn't give her the chance to start. You need to leave. There's nothing to talk about. The police are involved. Whatever you came here to say, save it for your lawyer. Dad, please, just listen. No. You made your choices. You stole from us. Lied to us. Treated us like we were embarrassing trash you needed to hide. And now, you want me to listen? She tried anyway. Started with the apologies. She knew she'd messed up. She'd said terrible things. But the stress, Dylan's parents pushing her, everything getting out of control. I cut her off. Don't blame stress. You weren't stressed when you told us to watch your wedding on a live stream. You weren't stressed when you tried to take out a loan using my social security number. You made deliberate choices because you cared more about Philip Hastings' opinion than your own parents. I was trying to fit in with Dylan's world, and that's the problem. You threw away your actual family to impress people who think we're garbage. People who look down on us. She broke down crying then. Told me about the wedding, how half the guests didn't show up, how the ones who did spent the whole time whispering about the disaster, how Philip spent the reception apologizing for her like she was his biggest mistake, how Dylan barely looked at her the entire night. I'm sorry that happened to you. She looked up, hope showing in her eyes. But I'm not sorry enough to fix it. The hope died. She stared at me like I'd slapped her. The wedding was horrible, Dad. Everything fell apart. And now they're saying I could go to jail. You have to drop the charges. Please. I'll pay back every cent. I'll do whatever you want. Just make this go away. Probably not jail. First offense, you'll get probation. Community service. But yeah, you'll have a record. A permanent one. This will ruin my life. Dylan's parents won't let him marry someone with a criminal record. His firm already called him in about his judgment. Everything I worked for will be gone. I let that sit for a second. Then I said what needed to be said. You didn't work for anything. Your mother and I worked. We paid for your education, your car, your apartment, your wedding. We worked overtime and extra shifts and cut our own budget so you could have opportunities. And you paid us back by stealing from us and telling your new family that we weren't good enough to be seen with you. But I'm your daughter. You're supposed to forgive me. You're supposed to love me no matter what I do. I do love you. That's why this hurts so much. But love doesn't mean letting you treat us like an ATM with no feelings. It doesn't mean protecting you from consequences when you commit actual crimes. So you're really going to let them prosecute me? Your own daughter? Yes. She stared at me for a long moment, then tried one last angle, the one I'd been waiting for. Mom wouldn't do this. Mom actually loves me. Your mother is the one who told me to press charges. She's the one who couldn't sleep for 3 days after finding out what you did. She's the one who cried for 2 hours about losing her daughter. So don't you dare try to play us against each other. She's done with you too. Holly's face went from desperate to cold in about 2 seconds. Fine. I don't need you. Dylan and I will figure this out. His parents will help us. They actually care about my future instead of holding me back out of jealousy. Dylan's parents care about their son's image. The second you became a liability with a criminal record, they dropped you. Dylan's firm is questioning whether to keep him. You think Philip Hastings cares about you now? You're the embarrassment he has to explain to his country club friends. You're wrong. They're not like you. They understand ambition. They understand wanting more than a boring life in a boring house with boring parents. There it was. You're right. I am boring. I fix trucks. I live in the same house for 30 years. I married the same woman and stayed with her through good times and bad. I'm proud I raised a daughter who had every advantage we never had. I'm just not proud of what she decided to do with those advantages. She had nothing to say to that. Just stood there, looking like exactly what she was. Someone who'd bet everything on the wrong people and lost. You can go now. The detective will be in touch about your court date. Make sure you show up. Skipping it would add more charges. I hate you. I actually hate you right now. I know. Maybe someday you'll understand why I did this. You need to leave. I have work to do. She left. Just walked out quietly, defeated. I watched her get into a BMW I'd never seen before. Probably Dylan's. Probably the last thing of his she'd get to use. And sit in the driver's seat for a long moment before starting the car and driving away. Pete appeared from the back office where he'd been pretending not to listen. You okay, Wade? Yeah, that needed to happen. Think she'll come around eventually? No, she won't. And I'm okay with that. I went back to the bay and finished the oil change. My mind was clear. Some decisions hurt in the moment, but feel right in your gut. This was one of those. When I got home that evening, Joan was cooking dinner and humming to herself, and I knew we'd made the right choice. That night in bed, Joan asked if I had any regrets. I told her I thought we'd given Holly every opportunity to be a good person. If she picked wrong anyway, that wasn't on us. Joan agreed, said she had to believe that. Otherwise, she'd go crazy trying to figure out where we failed. I pulled her close, told her we'd figure it out together. We always had. 3 months later, we were on that cruise. The Greek islands were exactly as beautiful as Joan had imagined. We'd booked 2 weeks with a private balcony, and every morning we sat there drinking coffee while watching the sunrise over the Mediterranean. We didn't check our phones for days. Just two people who'd been married for 32 years, finally taking the vacation they'd earned. The charges against Holly were reduced to a misdemeanor, probation for 2 years, 100 hours of community service, full repayment of the $7,500, and a criminal record that would follow her forever. Dylan lost his job anyway. They broke off the engagement a month later. Holly moved back to her apartment alone. Philip stopped returning their calls. The bank kept us updated on the case as it moved through the system. Holly never called to apologize, never tried to make amends. After a while, Joan and I stopped expecting her to. The hardest part wasn't the anger. Anger fades. The hardest part was accepting that the daughter we'd raised was gone, replaced by someone who valued money over love, status over loyalty. Joan cried about it sometimes. Late at night when she thought I was asleep, I'd hold her because there was nothing to say, but we had each other. We had our house and our health and our friends. We had Ray and Pete and Lydia, who sent us a Christmas card saying she was proud of us. We had jobs we were proud of, and a life we'd built together over 32 years. Sometimes love means holding people accountable. Sometimes it means watching them fail because that's the only way they'll learn. We were okay with that. We were more than okay. If you enjoyed this video, please hit that subscribe button. It really helps the channel and help us bring you more and better stories. Thanks. Stories. Thanks. Stories. Thanks. Stories. Thanks.